Hello, my name is Megan Ward, and this is my persuasive speech on animal cruelty and veganism and vegetarianism. My sources for this speech came from first a academic journal I got from the school website, a website weighing the pros and cons of if the whole world went vegetarian, and then the third one was a book that I read online. So to start off, here's my audience. Okay. The purpose of this speech is to inform about the living conditions of the animals that go through these different steps to eventually wind up in like Publix or Kroger or wherever you buy your meat from. Okay, to start off, here's some statistics. In the U.S., about 35 million cows, 115 million pigs, and 9 billion birds are killed for food just each year. There's only 9 million people in the world, so just picture that as the amount of birds that are slaughtered for food each year. The grain used just to feed livestock alone could feed 800 million people in a year. That could potentially be a life-saving thing for many people starving. Meat is directly linked to various health problems, particularly colon cancers and high blood pressure and even palpitations. So, for an example of the animals coming up in this, I'm going to tell you the story of the cow named 534. To begin with, a man named Michael Pollan purchased a little calf. It was only a few days old, and he wanted to see if he could raise it through the meat industry and follow it each step of the way as it got older, grew, and then eventually got slaughtered, and then he'd actually eat the meat from this cow. And so he sold it to the Blair Brothers Range in Kansas, and when he started it off, the cow was taken in, it was treated well, it was kept with a surrogate mother, and he was fed milk, and he free-ranged grass for about 5 months. And then as he got a little bit too big for that, they took him away from it, which is a very scarring moment for little cows. And they put him inside, and from that day forward, he never saw grass again. And he just lived on corn and grain and wheat until he got bigger and bigger and bigger. Cows aren't really meant to live like that, so they have to pump these cows full of antibiotics just so that they don't suffer and get sick, because they're supposed to be outside. They're supposed to be eating grass, and without those proteins in the grass, they just get sick and kind of roll over and die. So they're pumped with these antibiotics, which ends up in your meat. And he got those, and he got steroids, so he got really big. And towards the end of the year, he'd visit him more often as he got towards that age where he would just be slaughtered. And they transferred him to another facility for him to actually do the slaughtering process. And he actually watched him, the guy that bought the cow, and the cow 534 was hanging upside down, and he finally saw the end of that. And he got the meat from the cow. The whole thing was, it's cost him $987 to actually get the cow, and for all the living expenses, the feed and everything else. By the end of it, he only made $27 profit off this cow. And this cow suffered so much for $27, so it's really just not worth it. Okay. Enough with the cow story. A vegetarian diet can help alleviate world hunger, which I said it before. All this feed that they feed these cows, it's like hundreds of pounds of food is just crumbled down for them. And that could really potentially just be used for poverty countries like, say, Africa or parts of Mexico. And they could give that money if we just stopped with these horrid conditions for cows to live in and grow in, and eventually the cows would just be like pets to us or whatever. Research from Cornell University found that grain used to feed U.S. livestock alone could feed 800 million people. That's a ton of people. The human body has evolved to handle a primary vegetation diet, meaning we don't have the teeth most predators have, like lions and tigers have the really long canines. We don't have that. We're not really supposed to eat meat. And what I found really interesting was we have a lot longer of a intestine. Our intestine is more like a goat's or a horse's, as opposed to a bear, which has 3 foot of intestines, where we have 11. They have the short intestine so that digestion passes through quickly and they don't absorb as much of the bad stuff that's in carcasses. We don't have that, so that's where we get all these horrible fatty acids, and that's where we get these colon problems and heart problems because we're absorbing too much from this. According to the USDA and the Food Organization of the UN, meat is not an essential part of a healthy diet. A positive method to handle this problem is if everyone stopped eating meat, there would be less health problems. We could potentially help with world poverty. We wouldn't be able to finish it off, but we could definitely help the problem. The environment would definitely benefit because all this land set aside for these animals to live in and these huge buildings would be taken down, and that could potentially be more housing for people who are homeless. And the animals would be a lot happier because they're not being slaughtered for food that lasts one night. A negative method for this would be the population of the world is growing, which means a larger need for these animals, so more animals are being brought up to be slaughtered. The conditions are getting worse. The stuff they're injecting into them, the antibodies, are getting worse. People are getting more reactions to it, colon cancer, breast cancer. A lot of it is linked. If you look at my sources, you'll see. And the best way to help alleviate this problem would be to eat grass-fed or free-range chickens. Grass-fed cows, generally, they live in a field their whole life. The farmer rotates them, and they treat the grass as they eat. They leave grass droppings, which helps fertilize and make more grass, and they stomp it in. So they really keep the field going all on their own if they're given a chance, and there's not too many cows, which is a lot happier life for them. They live better, they don't grow as quick, and they don't have the health problems, and there's no antibiotics involved. Free-range chickens live in a happy little pasture their whole life, and they're kind of free to lay eggs or do whatever until they are big enough to be slaughtered. It's a lot more humane way as opposed to the trucks you see on the interstate carrying huge crates of these chickens, and they just look so skinny and malnutrid and sick. That's actually what you get from most places if they're not free-ranged. The best method is to go vegetarian or vegan. The difference being vegetarians don't eat meat of any kind, but there are pescatarians which only eat fish as opposed to vegetarians which don't eat fish at all. And they don't have a hand in any of the cruelty that goes with the animals. Or you could go even farther and go to veganism, which is where you don't eat any animal products at all, no fish, no meat, no eggs, no dairy, and you just have no foot in any of the suffering caused to these animals. And that's my speech. Here's my lovely audience again.
Very good.